All right, so a quick overview of the course of study for people majoring in speech communication. These are the classes that you would take. Whether you're in the public speaking track, whether you're in the interpersonal communication track, or whether you're in the generalist track, which means you're studying both public speaking and interpersonal communication, there are a few classes that you all have in common. The first is intercultural communication. If you want to be an effective interpersonal communicator one-on-one and in small groups, then you need to be able to reach out to and understand people who are from different cultural heritages. But if you want to be an effective speaker, it's also very important that you be able to get into the minds of your audience, including people who don't necessarily come from the same cultural background as you. So everybody takes intercultural communication. A second class that's common to all the tracks is listening behavior. Obviously, if you're going to be an effective interpersonal communicator, you want to have good listening skills. But in the public speaking track, something you don't want to lose sight of is you're not only being trained to be good on your feet, but you're also being trained to judge and evaluate other people speaking, and that requires very well-developed listening skills. Finally, there's communication theory. Communication theory is a survey of the big ideas in communication research that have withstood the test of time and that drive a lot of the work that we continue to do. They are our big understandings of how communication works. I should also mention that every communication major will do an internship, 6 credits worth, which tends to be, for a lot of people, a couple of semesters' work, and then a senior capstone. But the internship and the capstone, those are requirements for all majors all across the campus. So if you're going to be in the public speaking track, you would take Introduction to Public Speaking, you would then take Advanced Public Speaking, you would take Speech Writing, where you would learn how to write, not for people who are reading what you write, but for people who are listening to what you write. So how do you change the rhythm of language? How do you change the organizational devices so that people can take in the information read aloud when they're hearing it only one time? You would then also take Rhetorical Criticism. And Rhetorical Criticism is a class in judging the effectiveness of a lot of different kinds of persuasive message, primarily speeches, but a few kinds of communication that go outside of public address settings as well. If you take the interpersonal track, then you would take Introduction to Interpersonal Communication, Advanced Interpersonal Communication. You would then do a 15-week seminar in nonverbal communication. And in a couple of these other video clips, I've talked about what nonverbal communication covers. It covers how we communicate with movement, how we communicate with facial expression, tone of voice, how we communicate by approaching other people with touch, with our use of time, those kinds of messages. And then finally, you would take conflict management, because that's one of the biggest issues that comes up in situations where you want to be interpersonally effective. Now, if you're in the generalist track, I guarantee you that you're going to take both Introduction to Public Speaking and Introduction to Interpersonal Communication. But beyond that, you and I would have a fairly extensive conversation about what you thought, what direction you thought you were headed in, and then we would pick from all the communication course offerings, and we would build your course of study, and you would become proficient, you would become an effective, competent communicator in both interpersonal settings and in public speaking settings. Now, after you've had the classes that are common to all communication majors, and then after you've had the classes in your own sequence, there's 6 more credits of classes in the communication area you take that are electives. Now, those could be special problems classes, and we can have special problems classes about just about anything at all. We have special problems classes for people who want to go into specific careers. So there's legal communication, there's health communication, there's instructional communication for people who want to go on to teach. But then we sometimes also pick up other things that have been the subject of a lot of research in the field of human communication and that have a lot to do with how it works, how people are effective, how to understand what's going on. For example, the day that I am recording this, in the term coming up, the special topics class is going to be humor and stand-up comedy. And we're going to study humor from a communication perspective. How does it fit in? Why is it that we have such expectations that speakers in general, and if you think about it, pastors in particular, why do we have such a demand, such an expectation that they'll be funny? What does humor do? How does it break the ice? What are some of the dark sides of humor? And on the applied end of the class, as a way that we will build up our understanding of humor, the students are going to write their own stand-up comedy routines. And we are looking at some opportunities for them to deliver those both to campus audiences and even to audiences off campus. So that should give you sort of an overview of what it would mean, what you would find yourself studying if you were to major in speech communication. And if you've got questions beyond that, those would be good things to send to me.